In today's video, we are going to be going over factorials, and we're going to be going over specifically how to calculate factorials. We're going to be going over the significance of factorials, and we're also going to be going over why 0 factorial is equal to 1. So if this is something you're struggling with or are curious about, keep watching. What is the meaning of seeing 3 followed by an exclamation mark? Does this mean that we're yelling 3, or does this mean something else? In this case, this actually means something else, and in the context of math, this exclamation mark represents what we call a factorial symbol, and we would actually read this as 3 factorial. And 3 factorial is actually equal to a value. And to calculate 3 factorial, this is the same thing as saying 3 times 2 times 1, which is 6. Let's say we had 4 factorial. 4 factorial is equal to 4 times 3 times 2 times 1, which is 24. And 5 factorial is equal to 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1, which is 120. So you're probably seeing a pattern here. Basically, to calculate the factorial of any number, what you do is you take the product of that number and all its descending consecutive numbers until 1. And then you have the factorial of that number. And there's actually a formula that we have to calculate the factorial of any number n, where n factorial is equal to n times n minus 1 times n minus 2 up until n minus k, where k is equal to n minus 1. So let's say we wanted to calculate 4 factorial using this formula. First thing we want to do is calculate k, and k would be equal to 4 minus 1, which is 3. So to calculate 4 factorial, this would be equal to 4 times 4 minus 1 times 4 minus 2 times 4 minus 3, and we would stop here. And then when we simplify this, this would all simplify to 24. Now, usually we kind of ditch the formula. We don't really need the formula to calculate the factorial of a number because it's pretty simple, but this formula is pretty useful. So now we understand how to calculate the factorial of any number. But let's now understand what factorials represent. And let's understand this with colors. So let's say we had 3 colors, red, green, and yellow. And we wanted to find all the different ways that we can arrange the 3 colors. So one arrangement would be the current arrangement it's in right now, which would be red, green, and yellow. Another way would be red, yellow, and green. And ultimately, we would come up with 6 different ways to arrange the 3 colors. Now notice that we have 3 colors. So let's say we calculated 3 factorial. 3 factorial is also equal to 6. Pretty interesting. Now let's narrow down the colors just to 2 colors, and let's say we just had red and green. And let's do the same prompt. Let's find all the different ways we can arrange the 2 colors. And we would find that there's only 2 ways, which is just red and green, green and red. Now notice there's 2 colors, and 2 factorial is equal to 2. Okay, now let's narrow down the colors to 1 color, just red. And let's say we wanted to find the different arrangements to arrange the 1 color. There would only be 1 arrangement, right? So notice there's 1 color, and 1 factorial is equal to 1. So you're probably noticing a little pattern here, a little correlation, we can say. And basically, what this shows us is that factorials is more than just the value itself. Factorials actually represent the number of ways that we can arrange a group of items. So essentially, when you're calculating something like 4 factorial, we know 4 factorial is 24, but what that value actually means is that there's going to be 24 ways that we can arrange a group of 4 items. So it's really important to understand this correlation because it kind of adds meaning behind what we're doing, I guess. Now, there are 2 important rules that I want to go over, and that is the values of 1 factorial and 0 factorial. So we've kind of touched on this previously with the colors example, but basically 1 factorial is saying how many ways can you arrange 1 item, and basically there would only be 1 way. So therefore 1 factorial is equal to 1. But what about 0 factorial? So 0 factorial is essentially saying, hey, how many ways can we arrange 0 items? And you might think there's 0 ways, but actually 0 factorial is equal to 1 as well. Now, I know this is probably really confusing. So we're actually going to be going over two explanations as to why 0 factorial is equal to 1. So hang tight. So one of the explanations as to why 0 factorial is equal to 1 is based off of a pattern. So let's evaluate everything from 6 factorial all the way down to 1 factorial. So we know 6 factorial is equal to 720 and 5 factorial is equal to 120. So let's figure out what would we have to divide by 6 factorial to get to 5 factorial. And essentially to get from 720 to 120, we would have to divide by 6. And let's continue going down the line. So to get from 5 factorial to 4 factorial, we would have to divide by 5. To get from 4 factorial to 3 factorial, we would divide by 4. To get from 3 factorial to 2 factorial, we would divide by 3. And to get from 2 factorial to 1 factorial, we would divide by 2. So if we pause for a second, you're probably noticing a pattern. And each time we divide to get to the previous factorial, we're dividing one less each time. And it's kind of going like 5, 4, 3, 2. So without knowing what the value of 0 factorial is, it just makes sense that we would continue this pattern. And the next value down the line would be 1. So therefore, to get 0 factorial, we would divide 1 factorial by 1. And 1 divided by 1 is 1. So therefore, 0 factorial is equal to 1. So that is one explanation. So for the second explanation, we're actually going to revisit our little colors problem. And remember, basically we're figuring out how many ways we can arrange the amount of colors we have. And we figured out, hey, to calculate that, we just really have to count the number of colors we have and take the factorial of that count. So if we had 3 colors, we know 3 factorial is 6, and that would give us 6 arrangements. And essentially, you can view each of these arrangements as a set, right? So for 3 colors, that would produce 6 sets. For 2 colors, that would produce 2 sets. And for 1 color, that would produce 1 set. But what happens if we have 0 colors? How many sets would this produce, or how many arrangements would this produce? Now, believe it or not, this would still produce 1 set of arrangements. And that would be called the empty set. And believe it or not, the empty set is still one way to arrange 0 colors. And if you think about it, hey, if there's no ways to arrange any colors, right, that would still be one way, which is none. Now, it's probably kind of hard to wrap your head around, but this is another explanation as to why 0 factorial is equal to 1. But that pretty much wraps up this video, guys. And if there's any takeaways from this video, I just hope you better understand what factorials actually represent. So next time you have to figure out how many ways you can arrange a group of items, count the number of items you have, and then take the factorial of that count, and there you have it. So I hope this video was helpful, guys, and take care.